producer Collider, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to this 92nd Street Y New York event, Prime Video's The Wilds Casting Conversation. We do have just about the entire ensemble with us today, so a very large group of very talented people. We're going to break this panel up into two parts, the first focusing on our Dawn of Eve cast members, and then the second part focusing on the Twilight of Adam ensemble. And for all of the conversation, we'll have two instrumental forces on the Wilds with us. Please join me in welcoming creator, executive producer, and writer, Sarah Steicher. We also have executive producer, showrunner, and writer, Amy B. Harris. And now for our Dawn of Eve stars, Sophia Ali, who plays Fatin. Erana James, who plays Tony. Big fan of the golf clap right now. Keep it going. Shannon Berry, who plays Dot, is with us. What? Rain Edwards, who plays Rachel. Sarah Pidgeon, who plays Leah. And Mia Healey, who plays Shelby. I'll give you a golf clap from me too. You guys are all exceptional. Congratulations. Amy, I am going to throw my first question to you so we can kind of kick this off looking at the big picture of it all. So season 1 of the show had 8 main characters on the island. Season 2 brings that number up to 15. So can you tell us a little bit about the creative process in terms of figuring out how best to highlight everyone in a single season?
Look, that was always our, we're in the room kind of talking about everyone's stories all the time. And we really just tried to chase Gretchen's point of view, played by Rachel Griffiths. Like, what would that character do? And she would have a control group. So our goal, the minute we realized we were going to bring boys in for season 2, was always to be sure to service as many characters as possible, but never do it in a way that it didn't feel intimate and in depth. So we love a big scene around a fire and big group scenes, but we also really, our favorite scenes, I think, for me and for Sarah in the first season, were some of those two-handers that get real intimate. So anytime we could chase those moments, it was very exciting for us. And obviously with a bunch of new characters, you get to see all these different chemistries and how they either meld, merge, explode, friction off of one another. And that was really fun for us. And so for us this season with the Girls Island, with the Dawn of Eve, just watching new relationships deepen even more. So some of them, like I remember Rain saying to me, like she hadn't really done a tight scene with Jenna, who plays Martha. And they're very close in life too. So that was really fun to sort of watch them be in some really important pivotal scenes for their characters. So yeah, we just tried to take a lot of care and make sure everyone was serviced, but knowing we could put people a little bit to the side and then bring them forefront again in every episode.
It's exciting to hear that you have that level of collaboration on this too. So it's a good segue for you, Sarah, because I know you had loose vignettes mapped out for each of these characters day one when you first pitched the series. So of the bunch, which has changed the most from inception of their vignettes to what we're seeing them experience in season 2 and maybe what you have planned beyond?
I think a couple characters come to mind. I think with Rachel, certainly, my vignette that I always imagined her, I knew I wanted to move Rachel away from this very hard charging, hyper ambitious athlete. But that softness, I didn't necessarily know that softness would be arrived at through this, like, I think, incredibly tender and hard grief journey. And I certainly didn't imagine, from the outset that there would be a spiritual element to Rachel's softening, and how that has given her so much peace. But again, that's when you get in the room and you talk about how you want different characters to intersect with each other. I think we both found this, Amy and I and the writers, this intersection of Shelby and Rachel and how right that would feel. It's funny how you don't always foresee like the balm that another character could bring to another character's soul. I think, we started with Dot caretaking for Rachel at the top of this season, and that felt very natural because Dot has such an intense personal experience with grief. But like that starts the peace journey, but then it's really Shelby's faith piece that becomes the real like balm to the soul that Rachel really needs. And then I think also with Leah, I had always imagined her as this overthinking, overfeeling, relatively heartsick young woman. But I think it was really not until we got into the room and we talked about like the power of her skepticism that really became such a key part of her character. This like savvy skepticism. It's like that double-edged sword of overthinking. Like that it's a power, it's also a liability. And I think we really got to explore this season just how powerful that overthinking mechanism can be and how it can like wrench victory from the jaws of defeat for her.
Oh my head is exploding with follow-up questions right now. I think I'll start with you, Rain, because one of the last times we spoke, you told me that bringing Rachel's experience to screen of losing Nora required you to think about your own sisters. And I've got to imagine that's a really tough headspace to access. So what is the key to doing that in order to serve the material, but while also ensuring that at the end of the day, you can kind of step away from it?
Yeah, I think it's a part of like learning what your process is because it can change. Like you can use a bunch of different things to help bring you to that place. I think it's definitely knowing the essence of what emotion you're trying to convey. But something for me was I was fortunate to work on a soap opera for a long time. And through that process of doing all of the crazy like emotional journeys, I kind of found this process for myself, like mentally, emotionally, and like physically to ease myself in and take myself out. So that I don't take it home. But I think it's really important as an actor to figure out what your process is and what your safe space is, so that you can portray all of these things. Because at the end of the day, for me, I just want to make sure that someone can feel it when they watch it. But you have to also make sure you're protecting yourself because your body doesn't know the difference, necessarily unless you kind of guide it to know what the difference is.
Great success in that department. It's so powerful. All right, Mia, I'll come your way now. Can you tell us a little bit about the experience of filming a flash forward / dream sequence? Because you get the flashback material to work with that heavily informs the character in season 1. So how did that compare to, I guess, a drastically different type of way to cut away from the island material this time around?
Well, I mean, first of all, it was just such a fun scene to film, and it was such a fun environment to be in, and it was just just a great day. And it was helpful for me as an actor to figure out where, my character's headspace was, being able to kind of hop into this dream sequence and be able to live in her subconscious. It allowed me to kind of flesh out some things that she might be going through in her current state, especially towards the end of the season. In the last episode where we see them all in real time, it was helpful to have that information and work with that. But yeah, it was a really fun day.
All right, so going from one dream sequence to somewhat another, I'll toss this to you first, Amy and Sarah, because when I saw Ben Folds pop up in this show, like I stopped dead in my tracks and I just couldn't believe you went there, but you went there and you did it really well. And I was just tickled by the whole thing. But just for fun here, because I happen to have been reading that you considered the idea of making Leah's infatuation an actor from a movie. Can you share any ideas that crossed your mind if you had gone that route instead?
Sorry, Amy, do you want to take this? Well, I mean, again, the narrative that we chased and that we executed there was that, she envisions in a hallucinatory way her first crush, And it's by confronting that first crush and by, drowning him. It's this act of killing your influence, killing the kind of seed of what you perceive to be your kind of major hang up, your major obstacle emotionally to pass through to coming of age. So, we definitely kicked around different ideas for who this first crush could be. I think
we love the idea at the end of the day of it being musical because it's so tapped, but we had some funny bespoke ideas like Tom Colicchio, because we felt like Leah probably loved Top Chef and that was probably someone she weirdly was a little bit and we really wanted him to be more of a father figure to her at the end of the day than a actual crush. So the idea that at 11 years old, she was watching that, we thought was really funny. We had Sam Neill at one point from Jurassic Park, the original one, because she probably watched that. So we kind of ran around, but then we just continually came back to the idea that music is what taps your memory soul the tightest, the hardest, the fastest. And it's just, Leah would have a very sophisticated, bespoke sense of what was beautiful music. So we never really talked in any more poppy terms than that. It was always really, when we got to music, we were like, it's Ben Folds.
You struck a chord when you said Sam Neill. Now I feel like that would have been my reality. All right. So Sarah P, now to get into a little bit of Leah's situation here, because I think I told you this the last time we spoke, but I really just can't get over how demanding this role feels to me. You essentially need to convey that deep down, Leah believes that something is very wrong on the island, but also that she's starting to doubt herself. And then on top of that, you're playing, I guess, a more clear-headed version of her in the bunker material. So what is the key to being able to, I don't know, I guess, accomplish and navigate all of that clearly?
I think it really just came down to trusting Amy and Sarah. Information was given to us as we needed it. And I really think if they had laid it all on me, season 1 or at the beginning of season 2, it would have become impossible to play because you really can't play more than, one objective at one time. I think that was one of the most interesting things for me to explore this season was, these different versions of Leah, from her highs and her lows to losing her grip on reality to doubting herself, to losing the pit to Nora, and then the discovery of Rolf in the bunker, just charting how many different versions of herself there are. And I think when there's the levity is explored with Rachel of trying to, that is her, I think the theme with Leah is that, and all of these women, that they're just trying to survive. And in any one of those moments, it's either intimidating Rolf or Gretchen or Faber, trying to distract herself with Rachel, leaning on Fatten. In all of those, she's just trying to survive and maintain her sanity and try to get off the island or find answers to what happened on the island. So I think just holding on to that was probably the way I navigated it, and just trusting Amy and Sarah that were watching it back and directing us along, that trusting that we were getting what we needed to tell the story, and that there would be some through line throughout all of that.
To go back to something you just mentioned, is there any particular moment in season 2 where you found yourself needing to lean on Amy and Sarah more and ask some questions to really figure out a particular beat for her?
I think when Young is taking her back to her room and talks about the phone, that was one of the scenes I think that started moving towards that part of the storyline, that Leah has been, that there's been this plan all along. And I think really trusting, and I think Ben Lucas was directing that episode. So just communicating with Amy, Sarah, and Ben that how to play these scenes so that it makes sense later on as we're discovering more about that storyline and the plans that she has concocted to get out of there. Because that was new information to me. So I would say that scene was probably one, and really all of them. It's hard to choose one. Not that it's confusing. It's a big grand story and there's a lot of moving parts. So
Yeah, that's an understatement there. Very good job navigating all of that. Sophia, I'm going to come your way now. I love that season 2 basically proves that Fatin is one of the characters in this group who might know herself better than anyone else. I was just absolutely loving that quality of her this time around. And it was kind of making me wonder, while working on season 2 and maybe even looking ahead a little bit, what do you think Fatin's greatest weakness is? Because she's a proven powerhouse now, but what could take her to that next level?
It's a really good question. There's so many aspects of Fatin that even I don't understand completely, because I feel like she's just got a better way of understanding things than I do. And she doesn't get down on herself, you know? Maybe something that could harm her in the future is, I mean, I don't know, Sarah, like overconfidence, like maybe she could get cocky and not really, you know, accurately know if she can do something, if she has the skill set, or, you know, get herself in trouble in that way.
Yeah, it seems like her weakness, it's a bit of a contradiction, but might be her lack of vulnerability and like an excess of steeliness, which can sometimes, you know, can bite you.
Right.
If you don't have that soft
And
spot.
that would be the only way I can think of that she wouldn't be honest with herself.
I'm eager to see her grow more and maybe tackle that. All right. So speaking of like confidence in the way that someone supports a group right now, Shannon, I'm coming to you to talk about Dot a little here, because, you know, throughout much of the show, she has been a rock for almost everyone. And we see that composure crack a good deal in the second half of the new season. So at this point, which character do you think she needs that support back from the most? Who does she have the most to gain from when, I would imagine, she tries to refill those cracks moving forward?
I think what has always kind of been a through line for Dot is just her deep love and appreciation. I think especially for Fatin. I think Fatin is someone that she has always kind of looked to for guidance, which was definitely very unexpected. As much as I look to Sophia for guidance in my real life, I definitely think Fatin is kind of that constant that she didn't expect. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things about this show and about the writing is how that support can come from those unexpected places and in the people that you meet that you would least expect it from, and people that you feel like you meet and like, oh, we definitely don't align, or we're very different as people. And I think Fatin has always just been someone that she can feel safe with and brings her this sense of home and comfortability. And after losing her dad, who was the biggest support system for her, and she was to him, having someone around like Fatin who just completely accepts her, like that she can go toe to toe with, that she can get punched in the face by and come back the next day and be like, hey, we're all good again. But also all of these women she's able to lean on in different ways and kind of find solace in them and find solace in this family that they've all created together.
All right, Erana, you're up. Episode 7, when Shelby asks Tony if there's no way back, and Tony confirms that there's not. For you playing a beat like that, is that a response that she gives out of anger because Tony can lose her cool? Or deep down, does she really believe truly in that moment that there is no turning back and that relationship can't be repaired?
I think in that moment, yeah, I don't see her like acting out, you know. I feel like she believes in her soul that she's never gonna repair from the hurt that she sees has been caused by Shelby. And like, yes, she is lashing out emotionally, as we know that she can. But I also think like as a, you know, like playing Tony, there's like, you know, in a moment like that, in a scene that upsetting and, you know, devastating. I can't not believe that that's not the truth, like that is in her entire world. That is, her entire truth in that moment, which is so upsetting to say out loud now that I'm saying it. I've never actually vocalized that. I'm like, that's really upsetting.
I know.
Like, it's so sad for her and it's so sad for Shelby, but yeah, there's no way back.
Yeah, in that moment, I mean, that's the thing about
So sad for
relationships.
Shelby.
In moments, you feel like there's always surprise, just the way that Shannon was talking about Dot and Fatten. That's not in the first moments of the show. You'd never guess that was a bond. So certain moments become other moments later on, or stay the same sometimes. It's hard to know.
That was the right way to reform my broken heart in a matter of seconds. I appreciate that.
I really did pour it out. I'm sorry.
Well done, Amy.
Here, Mia, I will throw another one to you now. What was it like for you finding out how Shelby loses her hair? Had you come up with something in your mind for that, while working on season 1 or maybe between seasons? And if you did, how did what we got compared to what you were thinking happened?
Originally, I was always very intrigued and, kind of excited about like, I wonder how this happens. But I also really try to refrain from thinking too much in the future. I try to stay as present as possible and like stay up to date with the scripts and not think too far ahead because I don't really want to know. I like to kind of feel like I'm on the same page as Shelby at all times and I'm not ahead of her in order to like play her truthfully in those moments. But that was, so upsetting. The reason why she ended up cutting her hair the second time. And I said in another previous interview that I feel like Shelby cutting her hair for her is sort of like this sort of self-harm that she does to herself. And for that to, for her to feel like she has to do that after what she feels like she's done to Tony is just heartbreaking. She just carries around so much guilt and it just comes out in these really damaging, harmful ways. So it was sad, but also it kind of was beautiful. I mean, just beautiful writing.
Absolutely. All right, Rain, for you now, we were kind of talking about this little the other day. It's one of the things about Rachel's arc on this show that, really made a big impression is the idea of her dealing with the double losses, but not necessarily acknowledging the hand of it all versus how the loss of Nora makes her feel. So can you talk a little bit about navigating that? And maybe Amy and Sarah, can you jump in as well? And from a script perspective, why was that the right place to take a next step forward for Rachel?
So like, I think that for me, like playing Rachel, it was this obviously like losing your sister and getting your hand bit off in one moment is a lot to take in while being stranded on an island. But I think it's also this weird like irony of she's had this hand the whole time and also had her sister the whole time, but she hasn't really been connected with her sister the whole time. And so in losing both, she's like realizing everything that she had that she she definitely took for granted with her sister and valued her hand more, so to speak, like the diving more. But then in losing the hand, she kind of sees everything that like Nora kind of wanted her to be on this journey of season 2. But it's definitely something where she kind of comes around to, like, you kind of wonder how she gets to that place in interrogation and how she gets to this place of accepting that she doesn't have a hand. After all of season 1, you see her backstory of her fighting even on the island to fight to still be like, no, I'm going to be this diver, I'm going to be this, and this is what I do. It's definitely, I found it very interesting to play and very beautiful to play at the same time, because there's so much within the losses that speaks to Rachel and causes her to be vulnerable, causes her to look at herself and not kind of think of herself as this machine anymore, because she literally can't. And Aidan and Sarah can.
Yeah, very, very beautifully put. And from our perspective, I think it was it was this way to underscore how big the loss of her sister was. It really underscored it beautifully that this hand loss was almost like tangential or tertiary, because this sister loss totalized everything. It just hung over everything. And then also, I think, you know, she has hands among these other women that she's on this island with, and they provide that for her in a really loving and supportive way. So it's something that doesn't weigh as heavily, or she doesn't notice it as much as the heaviness of the Nora loss.
I love that quality of the story so much. All right, I'm gonna commit a multi-person Zoom sin right now, and I'm gonna pose a question to all the actors, because one of my favorite things about this show is the chemistry between all of you. And I know you got the opportunity to grow really close in season 1, but for each of you, is there another cast member who surprised you in season 2? Whether it's, you know, a new technique they tried, something they did to surprise you with the material you thought was on the page, and then they did something different on set, you name it.
I was really surprised by Jenna. Her acting, I felt like got a lot more her, or I don't know, like she just stepped into herself more. And I really was impressed with Shannon as well, because I feel like that she had a lot to adapt to. And also Rain was, I mean, acting, you're always, you know, on point, but like just your mental attitude it felt so much better, in my opinion, from what I could see, you know, and you were just like such a delight all the time.
Thanks. I was gonna say you, Sophia, but I find that like,
really,
yeah, no, I don't know if it's because like we both grew up in like the industry, like from young, and so like I always feel like there's this commonality, but. So I feel like I get you in that sense whenever we go to work and kind of how we going through processes, but you always surprise me with how you play Fat, and I'll read it one way and then you come to set and you do something completely different. And I'm like, dude,
That's
like,
so true.
thank you.
That's so true.
Thank you.
I'm gonna say in terms of like trying new things, I'm gonna go Jenna. I think I'm just like the way that girl can go from just like Jenna Claus living her life to literally turn over action boom, like she is
So true.
in her place,
So
in her
good.
feelings. It is crazy. It's so impressive. I'm like, yeah, she blows my mind.
I think for me it was. Oh, sorry. It's the
No, it's all
Zoom.
you. It's all you.
It was inevitable.
I think for me, something that wasn't really present there in season 1 was a relationship between Tony and Dot. And I think something that Erana does really well that I was able to see and experience in person is this strength and vulnerability that she brings to Tony. And I think being able to share that scene with you, Erana, was something very special. And it was a really beautiful day, and it was amazing to kind of to see you bloom and be a part of that with you and Rain. And yeah, it was just gorgeous.
My answer, I think, is sort of a cop-out, but I do feel surprised by every single one of these women. In particular, when we do group scenes, there's the ability of, it's sort of like, I don't know if it's because we've worked together for so long, but it really does feel like this symphony of like everybody somehow knows exactly what energy to give and take, so that we're able to tell those stories, even when there are 7 of us, you know, in different emotional places. And it just feels like there is this just surprise at the amount of flow and understanding of like what needs to be accomplished, and, you know, what attention we need to give to other characters so that their arc makes sense, and vice versa. I just feel surprised at how, I mean, obviously, you know, some scenes can take longer to get than others, but I feel like week after week, there was just this sort of ability for everyone to click in and have that space to be on that emotional journey and be so gracious and generous to scene partners to make those moments happen.
Yeah, I loved how generous, not that anyone wasn't generous in season one, but I loved how, and I guess this isn't surprising, but everyone kind of came back and felt so comfortable and like in their character. And like they were just everyone was just, they knew their character. So then when we were filming all these group scenes, I guess this is very similar to Sarah, but like everyone was kind of had this sort of willingness, this sort of like levity to be able to like explore new ways of doing things and try new things and kind of step outside, I guess, a box, because I feel like so many people came back to season 2 so confident in themselves. And that was such, not a surprise, but something that I just really enjoyed watching and seeing.
Well, now that you have all broken my heart, reformed it, and now it's about to burst, I can let you go and say thank you for joining us for this conversation, and a huge, huge, huge congratulations to all of you on yet another excellent season.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It is time for part 2 now. We still have Amy and Sarah with us. Thank you for sticking around. And now I get to introduce you all to the Twilight of Adam ensemble. We have Reed Shannon, who plays Scotty, Tanner Ray Rook, who plays Bo, Nick Coombe, who plays Josh, Zack Calderon, who plays Raph, Charles Alexander, who plays Kieran, Miles Gutierrez-Riley, who plays Ivan, Aidan Laprete, who plays Henry, and Alex Fitzalan, who plays Seth. Hello, good to see you all. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Sarah, I'm going back to you to start this one off now, because we already had mentioned earlier in the panel that you had loose vignettes for the Dawn of Eve characters. Was the same true for the Twilight of Adam characters? And if not, how did your approach to crafting their arcs differ?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I work on character, I do imagine it in an arc. I definitely start with their past, their home lives, their spirit, drawing from people I know, drawing from people. In the case of, the boy characters, we crafted those characters together, Amy, and also with the room. So we collaborated to really work on, the fibers of their being, what makes them tick. And then I often just forecast in the future, what are my hopes and dreams for them? I think you come at characters the same way you come at people. Who am I encountering in this space? And then also, what are your hopes and dreams for them? And that was kind of the process that we went through with all of our young men on this island.
Now I have to ask, is there anyone who had hopes and dreams start off in a particular place, but when you cast them in the role, you had to significantly reshape them?
I think, and Amy would probably, I think we've talked about this before, we really cast actors who had this essence of the character, and that way the process of bringing that to the screen would already be a little bit on rails in that way. And we really looked for that, whatever the core like quintessential quality of that character that I felt while writing, that we felt while talking about these people. If we found that, in these actors, of course they bring so much more, but we certainly start there.
All right, Zack, I am going to come your way now. So there are obviously significant parallels between the Dawn of Eve and Twilight of Adam characters, but for you in particular, it's flat out stated that Raph is essentially the Leah of Twilight of Adam. So with that in mind, was there anything about Sarah Pidgeon's performance in season 1 that you wanted to incorporate in your own? But then on the other hand, is there anything you strove to do to differentiate the characters?
I think that kind of what makes Raph and Leah so great in a partnership is how different they are. I think that Leah has a very much straightforward, following your instincts, that kind of vibe. And I think for Raph, especially as we watch his transition throughout the season, trusting his instincts isn't always necessarily his strong suit. And so I think that when we finally see the two of them together, they're sort of polar opposites, but it took Raph going through his journey on the island to be able to even comprehend and be able to not fight back, but work with Leah in those bunker scenes and to eventually, hopefully, get out and hopefully save the rest of the group. So I think that, I think I said this in the live with Sarah and Amy the other day, that their their hopes and dreams essentially are the same, but their outputs are different. Their inputs are the same, but their outputs are different. And I think that they very much are each other's kind of balancing act. And I think that if it wasn't for someone to kind of ground Leah, and it wasn't for someone to make Roth break out of his shell, that it maybe wouldn't have been as successful as it was.
How about working with Sarah Pidgeon as a scene partner? Is there anything that she was able to do for you on set that you just really appreciated and maybe brought something else out of your own character?
I mean, working with Sarah is fantastic. And that first day on set was like super exciting for just not only me, but the other members of the crew and everything, just because it really was finally the meeting of these two islands. And I think for her, I mean, you look in her eyes and she's got these beautiful eyes, and it truly gives you like everything you need. And I think also we were so collaborative and just kind of figuring out what this dance was going to be, especially since we shot those scenes over the whole course of a couple hours in a day, of kind of tracking and charting this journey of, all right, they just met, and how are we figuring out our level of communication, our level of comfortability, our physical, like actual, just like in each other's like presence. How is that vibing? How is that sitting? So it was definitely a dance, but I think for Sarah, I mean, she gives you everything she needs, and I just kind of get to ride on her coattails.
You do very well all on your own too, but your chemistry together was great. And the intensity in her eyes still like freaks me out in the best possible way. It's perfect for that character. Let's get into Seth's situation now. And I want to start with a question for you, Amy, on that. I kind of fear that I might be asking you to get into season 3 possibilities too much, but are you able to confirm for us if Gretchen chose Seth for nefarious reasons or because she really did think that this experience would help him?
Look, I think Rachel says it best about Gretchen. She cares more about humanity than she does about humans. I do think when she met with Seth, she felt like she could, in her arrogant way, help rehabilitate him, help him find his path. I don't think she was certain of it. I think, you know, what I'm so intrigued by, and what Sarah and I talked a lot about, and what Alex brought with such beauty is, you know, the idea of someone like Seth is we're watching the creation of somebody who maybe could go one of two directions. Like there's a version of his life where he is supported by the right people. And Alex talked about this a lot, which I love so much. He's like, yes, a lot of people have been abandoned, a lot of people have been hurt, but they don't make the choices Seth makes. So Alex wanted to kind of really live in that sort of the lack of empathy he has at the end of the day that Seth has it's all about him, and he has a bottomless need because of the things that have happened to him. And like, no, I mean, for me, no one else could play Seth, because to care for him and to have feelings for him and to have some empathy for that character, I don't think anybody could have done that but Alex. But yeah, she's willing to risk the well-being of people for this bigger cause. She's a zealot.
I would believe that at this point. Alex, to dig into Seth a little further right now, what was your experience like accessing a headspace like that? And also maybe more specifically, figuring out why a lack of love in his life has shaped him in this particular way versus him going in any other direction?
Well, first, the headspace was honestly really fun, to be quite frank. Like that, the last scene that we filmed in episode 8, that was probably the most fun I've had all season, except for when all of us were on the rock and we were kind of in episode 4. You know, those two were highlights for me. It's because of like all of the stunt training and like how action packed that scene was. Yeah, I mean, it was a huge challenge, absolutely, but I hope we did it justice. What was your second question?
Just figuring out why the lack of love in Seth's life, because like someone can respond to that in a variety of different ways, why that pushed him down a darker path versus any other particular way.
I think it's just a product of circumstance. Like Amy said, it's like you put a very troubled boy in those extraordinary circumstances, and you have one of two potential outcomes. And in this particular case, it's gone completely haywire because of his desperation and need, and the dark feeling of wanting the admiration of his peers. So yeah, I guess that's kind of it.
So challenging watch. You navigate that quite beautifully. All right, Nick, I'll come your way now because I am curious about Josh's response to everything he goes through. What kind of research did you do, or maybe conversations did you have to have with Sarah and Amy about the different stages of Josh's arc throughout the season?
Sure. I think one of the things when it came to episode 4 is we did do a lot of prep for that scene, which was great. We sat down with Amy and Sarah a bunch of times to discuss the scene and how it would play out. I think in regards to the arc, the writing was so beautifully done that honestly, just reading the script, there's so much on the page that you kind of just go with it. I think people deal with trauma in so many different ways, and it was really interesting to see how Josh dealt with his. I think, finally someone saw him for who he was and said, hey, I see you, I hear you, I believe you. And I think that was really cool. So he looked up to Kieran, so maybe he tried to take on some of Kieran's qualities, kind of played the mini-me role. But I think deep down he was processing. For so long, he's been the funny, nice kid who's just trying to fit in and make friends. So I think once he kind of realized that he can stick up for himself and be heard, it kind of triggered something in him.
All right, I might as well pave the way to discussing Kieran now. So Charles, for you, first, I hope you're looking on Reddit right now because there is so much love for Kieran all over there, just in terms of viewers pointing out how they were sure they weren't going to like him at the very beginning, but then he became one of the best of the best. So that arc was incredibly well done. So I know you're working with really great scripts here, but what were some of your personal goals in terms of being able to subvert expectations like that, but doing it in a believable way where he doesn't feel like a completely different person in the end? It's just a reasonable evolution for him.
Yeah, I mean, I luckily, like the rest of the boys, had the first season to see what the tone was and then be able to kind of go from there. But one thing I really liked about what the first season had to offer was that, like, even with the circumstances that they're in on the island, they still talk to each other at times, like, no matter how high the stakes are, in a very, like, conversational and pedestrian way. And I just really wanted Kieran to be someone that everybody wants to get a beer with, like, no matter like how much of a dick he is, or like, I knew that people were probably going to think that he's a bit of a bully or he thinks he's always right. But I was also like, he's kind of right, like, why are we just sitting here? And so like my way of making sure he wasn't perceived as just an asshole or a dickhead was trying to like, sprinkle in some humor or like make it like, teenage boys talk to teenage boys like, what the fuck are you doing, bro? Like, I don't know, like, it's dumb. Like, it doesn't always matter. I don't know if that really answers your question, but basically, yeah, that was my goal, was make him talk like a dumb teenager.
Oh, whatever path you took, it worked really well. I was very impressed by his journey throughout the show.
Yeah, the rest of it was all just great writing, and I pretty much fluked it on the day. So, yeah.
Give yourself some credit in that department too, though.
No, it's all just complete down to luck.
All right, Aidan, I'm coming your way now for a very, very specific moment because it wound up being one of my favorite line deliveries of the entire season. It's when Henry learns about what Seth did to Julia, and he shouts, I was effing right. Like, that cuts right through. I felt it so intensely. So what is it like working on a highly emotional scene like that, but also pinpointing the pitch perfect way to deliver a line like that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel that Henry throughout the whole season is pretty much in his emo zone and kind of tunes everybody out and does his own thing. I do feel like he grows as the episodes are going, but I think in that scene, it's the first time you actually really see him kind of just blow up and kind of be done with it and realize, who Seth is. And I think when I read it on the paper, I was just like, woo, I was like, let's go. Like, I was excited to be able to do that as Henry, because I think it has been building up in him for such a long time. And I think he's always suspected something about Seth. And even before the island, I think he just sees how outgoing and personable he is. And I think anyone who is like that, there's something wrong with them. I think they always have their demons with them. And I think by that, in that scene, he realizes it.
Really excellent scene there. All right, Reed, for Scotty now. I know he's a bit of a hothead, but I really do love the way that he stands up to Kieran in episode 7. And then also after that, it makes all the sense in the world when he's kind of put in charge in the finale of season 2. And it's kind of been making me wonder, what kind of leader do you think Scotty would be? What makes him stand out from the others in the group and maybe add a leadership quality that could maybe even serve them well in season 3?
I would say if Barack Obama was from like Florida, the backwoods of Florida, that's probably most definitely Scotty. Like, he has all of the regalness that Obama has, but he has a little bit of hood inside of him. And so, there's that element of hustle that you can't let down. No, but I definitely, I think his hot-headedness is good because, in the way, like Charles said, they, even in hectic moments, they still have good conversations with each other and get their points across. I think it's good to have Scotty's way of doing that because nobody else is like that. Like, nobody else is just loud and abrasive, you know what I mean? And I think it shows a nice variety of like how people get their points across and how people communicate with one another, you know what I mean? And I just, there's leadership qualities, I feel like, in every single one of the boys on the island. And I feel like they're brought out in all the different moments,
Key to making a really successful ensemble show is what you just described there.
That's right. Hey, Amy and Sarah laid it out. They laid it out for us,
All right. We obviously have to go from Scotty to Bo now. I feel bad, Tanner. You've been here for so long and so patient. I should have put your question first.
Hey, I'm just enjoying being here. I love these quotes.
So Bo is one of few characters who is literally oozing with heart and good intentions from start to finish and never really falls to the dark side, so to speak. So with everything he's been through, what do you think it is that gives him that strength? And I guess, does he even have a dark side?
I'd definitely say Bo does have a dark side. I think he doesn't like to let his dark side out because of everything he's been through. Like, his father is abusive. He doesn't come from a good home really at all. And his only saving grace is Scotty, really. And I think he's more scared of going to his dark side because, he's a big guy. But he's quiet. He doesn't like to talk a lot. He likes to observe. And I think he's more scared of his dark side than anything else. And when he's on the island, he just wants everything to be calm. He just wants to get home, but things just keep happening, and he just wants to help and make sure that everybody's okay.
I know things have to change and characters need to be challenged, but never lose that heart. Feel like I need it to pull me through these challenging situations. All right, now, Ivan, you're up. I think I've already told this to you before, but I thought Ivan's arc was one of the most beautiful things this season, and you really do an exceptional job navigating that storyline. So to dig into one of my favorite scenes for you right now, Ivan has very clearly been sorry for what he did to Kieran for a long time. So why, in the moment when he's making the fire for the other group in episode 6, did that feel like the right time for you performing to really say it, to have it finally come out?
That's a great question, Perry. Thank you. The apology scene was a complicated one for me, just because I remember on the day, at first I was playing it a little emotionally. And I got direction to just sort of play it straight down the line, just the apology. Just the verbiage of it is enough, and is in itself a huge moment for someone like Ivan to even own up to something like that. I think that Ivan in that moment is recognizing how his past actions are so damaging and harsh. And when it comes to something like life and death stakes, I think he sort of is doing a lot of reflection and coming face to face with someone that he has a lot of respect for, who is Kieran, and is asking himself to, in this moment, do something else that is extremely difficult, and own up to his mistakes.
It's a beautiful moment. All right, things are about to get a little wild right now because I'm going to pose a question to our whole cast here. Inspired by the show, I want you to tell me who here makes the bed every day, who never makes it, and who is the chaotic mixture of the two.
Well, I think Bo definitely makes his bed, and he probably makes Scotty's too.
Yeah, definitely makes Scotty's. He's like, he comes over and he's like, Scotty, you didn't make it again today.
I'd believe that.
I think
Do
Josh.
we even have beds? I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I was going to say, I think Josh doesn't realize that beds are even made. I think it's just happened.
Smooth out the sand.
It's just like
smoothing out everybody's sand.
The bed.
No, he has a housekeeper for sure. Does it?
I feel like in 202, I feel like you see me get out of bed. And so while I'd love for Roth to be a person that does make his bed, I feel as though he doesn't. But you know what? That's a character arc right there. And maybe season 3, he'll learn to make
Rebel without a cause, bro.
All right, Aidan, I'm not letting you off the hook. Does Henry make his bed?
I think he's a hit or miss guy. I think every now and then, I think he makes his bed, and then some days he just puts in his septum ring and then he's out.
Fair enough. All believable stuff here. All right, you guys navigated that one pretty well. Here's another one for everyone. So I was telling the stars from Dawn of Eve, one of my favorite things about this show from day one, all throughout season 2, is your cast chemistry and what the characters bring out of each other. So when you were on the set of this show, is there anything someone in the cast did for you as a scene partner that you really appreciated, or maybe even brought something out of your own character that you didn't realize was there before?
All of these guys are like super generous when it comes to being on camera and stuff. Like doing the scene with Miles when after we killed the Jag and stuff like that. I actually was not as prepared as I could have been. And I can understand how anybody in that situation would be like, oh, can you like get your shit together? But it just was such a heartwarming scene that, you know, there wasn't anything but love in between it, and just him being so generous as an actor, you know what I mean? Like it took the pressure off, and I feel like that's the same with anybody, even the girls. We haven't really worked with the girls, but I'm sure it's the exact same feeling.
I would also say that I think the 2 expulsion scenes, I guess I have an expulsion scene would be like also an expulsion scene, but the Seth and Roth expulsion scenes, some of those group scenes are probably some of the most generous moments we had as a cast, especially for the Seth expulsion scene. Like Charles was in it, and there was so much love for Josh, and I think having a central person to put all that love into made it feel so much more like there really unfortunately were sides, and there were wrong sides of history. And then I also think with the Roth expulsion scene too, that it gets obviously dicier, as that's not necessarily expected, but you know, there's so many moments that I really enjoyed when I watched the show, of things that we incorporated on the day, or moments that happened throughout those little takes that made it into the show, that were all like spontaneous. You know, Nick is such an incredible person in that respect as well. He gives something new so often. So I think it's great.
Being able to play off of Alex as, you know, as their stepbrothers, I think in order to play such a complex and disturbed character, you know, you have to be a fantastic actor and really be in it, and in order to pull that off, you know. And I think every time I had a scene with Alex, I just felt like I learned a lot, and it kind of, I feel like we played off each other very well, and I feel like the brotherhood was very much there, and the ups and downs for sure, and feeling manipulated, you know. I think you can see that as well.
I want to say two real quick. My first one has to be in the scene where we're all surrounded the trap and Bo says, "Can we put our hands in?" And it was with Miles. The first take that we did, I didn't realize how close to me he was. And I like did a sweep and I looked over and just the face of, "What the hell did you say?" Just like super close. Like I almost broke, but like it was such a, it was my favorite reaction of the whole show. But then secondary is just the all the check-ins that me and Reed would do like in takes. Cause like, like when there's a big group scene going on, like Bo won't really chime in and Scotty will kind of like stay back a little bit, but we're always constantly checking in with each other. There's always looks like every look that we give says 1,000 words. And it's just like
getting to play best friends is like so comfortable. It really is because, on camera, whether you're in it or you're out of it, like you have somebody that has your back. You know what I mean? And that's like it's a beautiful connection. And Tanner's my boy. So, it made the world.
Did we get everyone? Nick, did you get to chime in on this one?
No, I was, if I had to pick a scene this is going to sound super cheesy, but the Frisbee scene was so fun.
Oh, yeah. So
basically,
good.
if you just play Frisbee and we're going to shoot it. And there were so many like real and genuine moments.
Like Raph getting hit in the head with the Frisbee.
Yeah, I'm so glad.
I was like, Raph!
A little heads up that was going to make the final cut would have been lovely. Just a smidge of a heads up.
Well, and to that, the director, who is also my husband, said, "I'm just going to have them play." And I kind of freaked out because I was like, "No, we have moments we have to catch and it all has to be." And he's like, "No, the whole point of that has to be, it's so authentic and genuine and spontaneous." And then just watching those actors playing Frisbee, but in their characters and just seeing, Sarah had pitched that scene and she's like, "I don't know if you're going to like this." And I was like, "I am in love with this scene." And just to see how it went from that conception in the writer's room to how it played out, just like how much all of those different pieces matter. It was so exciting to see. That was gorgeous for me to watch. And then like the surprising who was actually really good at Frisbee in their real lives. I was like, wait, what? So that was fun.
Who was the best?
Expose them. Who was really good and who wasn't really good? I'm going to put someone on the spot.
I'm not answering that, but the gentleman certainly can.
Zack did get hit in the actual head with.
Well, that's a real shot. Also, this scene was so spontaneous and like in the moment that we had shot for about 15 minutes, and a PA ran over and was like, "Hey, your sunglasses are still on, and we can't use any of this footage, so we have to take them off." Actually, I was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry."
Amy, one thing I've been curious to ask about is the location change from season 1 to season 2. What were some of the benefits and what were some of the ways that the production process changed when you had the opportunity to move somewhere else?
So for starters, New Zealand and the crews there are the most beautiful, gifted. The locations are spectacular. The people are the most amazing. Our crews were so special. And as we were sort of managing COVID, obviously was a big part of as we were trying to figure out what came next for us. I think for me, what Australia brought, Sarah and I knew we wanted to move the girls off the beach. And so we had already sort of identified that we wanted a different vibe for them, that they had found protection and a closed-in sort of created community for themselves in that forest. So obviously we were in search of an island that looked very different beach-wise for the boys, because even though we still wanted it to have that sort of, Sarah very clearly never wanted tropical, because if it's a metaphor for coming of age, it isn't a vacation at a fancy hotel. It's winds and fear and, sort of very graphic, epic locations. And it was like, it felt sort of very, Sarah and I were just actually talking about this week. It felt very different. And some of it was that we added to the cast. And some of it was the way those locations played for us was so different. Similarly, fantastic crews, like a beautiful place to be, spectacular locations. that beach felt more like a moonscape, the men's beach, than the girls' beach was that sort of black, epic darkness. And then one of the weird parts of it was on an island, like it was on another island that we had to take a ferry to. So it was this very bonding experience for everybody. We would get to this North Stradbroke Island, North Stratty, and there was one restaurant. So everybody would eat at the same place every night. It became kind of like a camp, which didn't quite happen in New Zealand in the same way, because, you drove to and from the beach every day. Although that became such a tight community also. But for me, they were very different, and yet both kind of brought such spectacular specialness. It was very exciting. I'd never done that before. I'd always worked on shows where you just return to New York City, or so this was a whole new thing for me. So it was very exciting.
Change there really naturally suited the story evolution quite well. I was very impressed by that. I'm going to have to let you all go in a minute, but I can't end this conversation with doing my job, manifesting a third season, but also fishing for information. Is there anything about your hopes for the future, Sarah and Amy, that you can tease, something that you've been itching to dig into and plan to as the show moves forward?
Well, personally, as I've been working on a coming of age show, which has always been, it's like the heart and soul of what it is. My dream is just to show these characters, the men and the women, in their like proto immature struggling stage, and then to show them in a potential season 3, come across that coming of age barrier and into some kind of state of maturity in the real world, not in Gretchen's clutches. Some people might not make it out of those clutches, but to show them evolve into who they might actually become in, the here and now and the real world. So I desperately want to show that.
Trying not to read into it too much, but I think I just saw some expressions changed as you explained that.
Some of us are gonna die.
I mean, you can lay it out frankly like that.
I don't know. I know nothing. I know nothing.
I have to let you all go, but again, congratulations.
I'm sorry, Sarah and Amy, don't find me.
Thank you all so much for your time today. Big congratulations on The Wild Season 2. And to everybody out there watching this conversation, thank you for joining us, and keep spreading the word about The Wild on Prime Video.